Washington's heading down to USC. It's time for some keys to the game.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Rome Tomashoff. That's Lars, Hanson, who's coming at you live from the Washington team media room. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. Again, we write for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. You can check out all our written work over there at si.com/college/Washington. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege and use code lockdowncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Lars, we're just having some fun talking about this game just before the start. Before we decided to press record, as I remember to turn on my light here for all our YouTube viewers. So let's just jump right into it. Offensive keys against USC. Washington's offense has done a really great job for the most part this season. Michael Penix seems to be healthy. What's your first key to the game here?
I mean, it all starts up front with the offensive line, because if they don't protect Penix or open the holes in the run game, this game's over. Like, it's just flat out. Like, in order to be a shootout, you have to protect Penix. You have to slow down Bear Alexander and USC's defensive front. And Bear's not the only one, but I think it certainly starts with kind of just winning the line of scrimmage, right? Because that's what they haven't done against Arizona State and what they kind of didn't do against Stanford. I mean, Bralen Trice went off, but he only had, a half a sack or a sack?
I think he got one, yeah.
Right, but he had 16 pressures. So if it's a 1 in 16 clip, that's not necessarily what you want to see. You'd rather honestly see half of those pressures, but multiple sacks. But at the same point,
I was going to say, if half of those are sacks, that's kind of wild.
But I will say, right, 2 point. But I will say, I talked to Eric Schmidt after Wednesday's practice, and he said that we call them. So a lot of people, when they talk about pressures, they don't necessarily consider it a stat. Like, what is a pressure stat, right? When they call Schmidt calls it a havoc sack or a habit stat, where it's like you're causing havoc, you're disrupting the play. So they do count that there is some value there. Obviously, you do want to see the sacks, but regardless, for Washington offensively, it starts with protecting Penix and keeping USC's defense down to where it's been.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's something where I finally just get to, continue my anti-Alex Grinch agenda here, because Washington's offense has the ability to throw the ball all over the yard. And USC hasn't really been able to stop anything. Let's just call it what it is. But the one thing that they really had a lot of trouble with was stopping against Cal, was stopping Jaden Ott and the run game. So one of the first things, and I feel like we say this every single week, and Ryan Grubb does too, where you need to find a way to establish the run game. And I think that this is the Huskies have a really great opportunity to do that this week against just this Trojan defense, because the offensive line is healthier and it continues to get better. I really do think it's gotten better each and every week, especially now that Julius Buelow is back. Like, they had the real hiccup against Arizona State, but I don't think they were terrible against Stanford. They were definitely better than they were the week before. But I think that establishing Dylan Johnson in the run game and just forcing USC's secondary to come up and make tackles, especially early on in the game, is something that could really change things for the Huskies. And, we'll talk a little bit more about the health of Jalen McMillan and how that would also change things for Washington's offense. But Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk are going to get theirs. And if they're facing single coverage against these USC DBs, they're going to win way more often than not.
Right, and I think that's certainly, with or without Jalen McMillan, you would think that Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk should still be able to win those battles, right? That's Again, we've talked ad nauseum about how important Jalen McMillan is, but at the same rate, they've still been winning with those two guys out there. And I'm just looking at the stats right now. We talked before the show, which we'll talk in the second ad read about, but now it kind of makes sense why those numbers. They've given a 247 and 235 on the ground the past 2 weeks. They've almost given up more rushing yards than passing yards on defense. So if you're Washington, this is the perfect get-right game to get the running game going. And you got Will Nixon, you got Tybo Rogers, Dylan Johnson, obviously. So there's plenty of reasons why Washington should not have a problem offensively in this game.
No, absolutely. And that's kind of the biggest thing, right? Where if they come out and play like they did against Arizona State, that's not just a problem that you can think about this week. That's a problem that you're going to think about all month, because the defenses aren't really going to get easier than facing Alex Grinch. So I think that this really is that get right. Not only is it really a get right game offensively, but it's just kind of a reassertion kind of game where everyone thinks that this game is going to be a shootout. I am in that camp as well, where I really do think that both teams could get over 40 points. But I think that one of the biggest things for Michael Penix is, now that, he said he's feeling better now, he's over the flu, and we talked a little bit about how Ryan Grubb said it might have really bothered him in the last 2 games, that Michael Penix is going to get more than enough opportunities. I think that if Jalen McMillan is able to play, like we talked about a little bit earlier on in the week, where, we've seen his, Ryan Grubb talked about, maybe getting him into a brace and seeing how that makes him feel, where we've seen him in both the last 2 games he's tried to come back, have issues with cutting off that leg and having to come off early, where I think that could be really huge. And that just opens up so much of what Washington's offense wants to do over the middle of the field. And that would help open up extra lanes for the run game, in my opinion, too.
Certainly, but I think, Jeremy Bernard should be able to fill that role if Jalen isn't able to go. And I think, I agree with your point that the running game, it would open up the run game, but I almost think with the way USC's defense has played this season, those lanes should be open regardless. Like if Washington isn't able to open USC's defensive front up with the run game, after Cal went for 235 and Arizona went for 203 and Stanford ran for 209, I mean, none of those teams strike me as great running teams, right? So
I do like Jaden Nod. I'll give him that. And Jonah Coleman's been really talented too.
But in terms of top end talent, Jaden Nod, I guess, would be the one there. But yeah, I mean, certainly with Washington's offensive line, you would think they should be able to move those bodies up front.
No, absolutely. And that's because we will talk about it later on. But Dylan Johnson, I know one of my bold predictions every single week seems to be 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, where we'll see if I go back down that road again. But this does feel like one of those weeks where he could have a big game, right? He's got 100-yard performance this year, and it was in the biggest game of the year against Oregon. And it feels like he could absolutely do that again if asked. And I feel like we might see a little bit more Will Nixon in the run game as well, because he just kind of provides that extra speed element. And I feel like we haven't talked as much about Washington's passing offense as we should. But at the same time, we kind of have faith in them to make plays and do everything they need to, because USC has shown that they're very susceptible, just kind of in every level of their defense, against basically everything. So I think that Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk are going to still put up big numbers. And then whoever it is in the slot, Jeremy Bernard, Jalen McMillan, if we maybe see a little bit more Giles Jackson or Denzel Boston or whoever else, that they're going to end up putting up big numbers by the end of the day.
Right, and I think it's just a matter of how do you mix and match and when do you play certain guys. I mean, Giles might be on a pitch count if he plays. Jalen probably will be on a pitch count if he plays.
Yeah.
At the same point, like, you do want him if he's healthy. If Jalen is fully healthy and good to go, you want him out there as much as possible. But I think if you're able to establish yourself and get a couple score lead, two touchdown lead in the first half, let's say, maybe you play Bernard just as many snaps as McMillan in the second half, right? Where you're able to build up both of those guys. And also because, yes, you're playing to win each game this season, but you also do want to make sure those guys have banked reps in the system moving forward, especially for next season, with most of the room going to be departing, depending on how the season goes out.
No, absolutely. And before we move on here, because we're going to end up talking about the defense on the other side of this break, but first, we're going to be talking about our friends over at Prize Picks, because Prize Picks is awesome. It's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the number. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less. You pick more than or less than on anywhere between 2 and 6 player stat projections, and all you have to do after that is just watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is the most fun you can have, winning up 25 times your money this football season, and now you can play during the basketball season too. All you have to do, again, select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. Testing your skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can earn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. It's simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. Do you want to get in on the action? Go to prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege and use code lockdowncollege for first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockdowncollege and use code lockdowncollege for first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, moving on right along here to the defensive side. USC has a high flying offense, right? They deserve their credit. Caleb Williams is still the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and they're really tough to defend. What do you think is going to be the number one thing that Washington's defense needs to do to kind of get back on track after allowing nearly 500 yards and 33 points to the Stanford Cardinal?
I think it really, and I know this is going to sound a little crazy, but it almost starts with stopping USC's run, because Marshawn Lloyd has been one of the better running backs of late in the conference, and Washington actually has done a fair job, right? They've only allowed one game under 100 yards rushing, so it hasn't been great this season, right? And so that,
right.
I mean, the obvious one is try to slow down Caleb Williams. Well, how do you do that? Well, when USC doesn't pass and they want to go to the run, you need to be able to stop that and force USC into just relying on Caleb. And if Caleb has to run, then you have to rely on your linebackers to be disciplined and Mish Powell in the slot to kind of be that extra support, third quote unquote linebacker sort of thing. So USC, their ability with Caleb to just move the ball, if Caleb is not one dimensional, right? Because he still has his legs, right? He's still one of the most elite athletes in college football. But if you're able to take away USC's run and not have that threat, then you can kind of start to zero in on Caleb as a runner and start to scheme your defense around that,
right,
to where you're focusing more on that versus if you're getting gashed for 5 and 7 yards a run, Caleb almost becomes Superman at that point, because then whether he's running or passing, now you're talking about defending all three versus just one or two.
And I think that Edefoni Lefosio has had a fantastic season. He's the top graded linebacker in the conference, according to Pro Football Focus. And he's just had a really, really great season. And one thing that I think is going to make just defending the run really tough is Marshawn Lloyd has been excellent this season. He's a really, really good back for the Trojans. And I think that they're able to do so many things. And that's what makes one of the things that makes this offense so explosive, right? Because Caleb is awesome. He can throw the deep ball. He just has an insanely accurate arm too. But just the way they can run the read option makes things really, really tough. Like Caleb had a really tough day throwing the ball against the Arizona Wildcats a couple weeks ago. So what does he do? He just pulls it and runs for 3 touchdowns. Like it's some of the things he can do are truly wild. And then just kind of looking at their passing attack, they have a really, really talented group of receivers. Taj Washington's awesome. Brennan Rice. It hasn't been Zachariah Branch. I love watching that kid play, man. He's electric. And then he hasn't necessarily had the best season since transferring from Arizona, but Dorian Singer is also a really, really talented dude. Like he just ran over the Husky secondary. And when he was still with Arizona in 2022, he had a fantastic day. So they can beat you in so many different ways. And that's one of the things that makes this tough. And I think I talked to Jabbar Muhammad on Tuesday about just how tough it is to defend Caleb, because they have played each other before when Jabbar was still at Oklahoma State and Caleb was at Oklahoma when they played in Bedlam. And he just said, yeah, it's really, really hard. And because our eyes have to be constantly moving. We have to be watching so many different things just at any given point in the play, because one of the things that I really liked that he said was Caleb can beat you in so many different ways. Like once he gets out of the pocket, like he's truly electric, and it doesn't matter what kind of route the receiver is running. He has the arm talent to just put the ball on them. And that's so hard to defend. So just playing man coverage and just like sticking to your guy is going to be next to impossible.
Right. And then it makes it worse when Washington might be down to the third or fourth safety option. So, the combination of those two factors kind of certainly feeds into the narrative of, hey, this is going to be a shootout. Like as much as Washington might want to say that their defense is better and that their defense might play up to the challenge, you can still play up to the challenge and give up 38 points to USC.
Yeah.
I'm just setting that bar low. I'm saying
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, Cal put up 49. So the fact, and USC still got 50. So it's like there's a way in which USC is always going to get their points. Oregon got 33. They probably should have got 40, right? Just conservative estimate there. So can Washington's offense get the 40 points? Probably. So it's just a matter of which defense can step up when it actually matters. And I think that question has been Washington more than USC this season. I mean, Washington's been the
Right.
defense of the two that stepped up when called upon this season.
Right, because like even if you look back at the Utah game where that like USC's defense lost in that game with the late penalty, with just letting Utah, who doesn't have one of the better offenses in the conference, just drive down the field, just basically untouched for the most part, outside of a roughing the passer penalty, which extended the drive. So I think that I trust Washington's defense than I do more USC's. But it's something we talked about on the Wednesday show, so everybody make sure to go back and listen to that too, that USC's offense might even be a tougher challenge than Oregon's because of all the different things it can do. Oregon is operating at a higher level. There's no question about that. I don't want to hear any Oregon fans that just pop into the comments for whatever reason, just say, oh, the Huskies are bad. We don't care. But USC's offense is more explosive. USC has 14 pass plays of over 40 yards this season, which is the most in the conference. That's really, really tough to defend. And I'm concerned about Washington's depth at safety. We'll see how they can, operate this weekend. We'll see who plays, we'll see who doesn't, because we haven't heard much of anything on Asa Turner or Cameron Fibikilanen or Vince Nunley. He probably won't play, and even Dom Hampton. Like I think that, when it comes down to it, I think this is the kind of game that Asa will be able to suit up for, and Asa and Dom will be the starters back there, and there'll be a little bit more depth, but it's still concerning with what we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
Right, exactly, and especially like we've said, with the caliber of offense that USC has, you could put anybody back there, and I think they're still going to give up yards. So it's a matter of just which one can make the play at the right time. I mean, if it comes down to a fourth quarter and it's 42-45 and USC is driving, can Washington's defense make a stand? Like, which defense are you betting on in the fourth quarter is basically how this game is going to go. And if it doesn't go that way, well, those odds actually probably favor Washington, just because if USC's offense isn't able to get going and Washington's able to play better, Washington's defense certainly would have more of a chance to hold USC at bay and keep that separation, instead of the other way around, where USC gets up by 14, but that defense is like a leaking sieve, so it could just give up a touchdown at any point, and Washington can score at any point. So it's a matter of just which. I mean, the over will hit. I'm pretty sure about that. So it's a matter of will there be any turnovers? I think that's the other thing too, is because we've seen Penix at time be prone to getting baited into some decisions that he not necessarily should make. But also, can you bait Caleb into the same situation? Can you force a fumble? Can you do anything like that?
I think that Notre Dame's defense, which is a better defense than both, like Notre Dame's defense has been one of the best in the country this season. I feel like they set the blueprint as to what it's like to truly contain Caleb Williams, because they forced him into 3-4 interceptions. I believe, I know it was at least 3. I can't remember if he threw a fourth or not, but they kind of, it was 3. So I feel like they really just set the precedent and put on tape, okay, these are the kind of coverages that you can run to kind of confuse him. And Utah did a good job of containing him, and they were able to just kind of figure that out, even though just Kyle Whittingham has the blueprint on how to beat Lincoln Riley. But I think that that's something that really is just kind of is something to notice, is that Caleb can also be prone to those turnovers at times. He's a really talented player. He's probably still going to be the number 1 pick in the draft, but he hasn't played at the same level that he did last year. And I think that the Huskies can take advantage of some things defensively, and especially if they're able to get some pressure on him. I shout out to Trevor Sycamore over on the NFL Stock Exchange podcast a couple weeks ago. He put out the stat that at the time, Caleb Williams's throw rate when he was out of the pocket under pressure, or his passer grade when he's out of the pocket under pressure is 23.8. Like that's shockingly low for after being 78 in 2022. So there are some things that Washington can do to throw Caleb off his rhythm. The question is, can they do it?
That's true. However, just looking at the stats, Caleb Williams threw as many interceptions against Notre Dame away that he's thrown in his entire career at the Coliseum.
Yeah, that's wild.
He's only thrown 3 interceptions at the Coliseum, and 2 were against Colorado, 1 each year, and 1 was against Arizona State.
That's a wild stat.
So, like, I think, kind of like with Washington playing Oregon at Husky Stadium, that game's probably different in Eugene. I mean, they won in Eugene last year, but let's just be real here. Two better teams this year. Maybe that game goes differently in Eugene. Same thing with this one, where it's like, if this game was in Seattle, it's probably a 7-point spread, maybe a 5-point spread for Washington, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that range. Going down to USC, can you force Caleb to get out of his comfort zone at home? Right. That's really the key to the game here.
I like that. And, with that, we're going to jump over before we get into our favorite segment of the week, the bold predictions and Lars's never wrong score prediction. I want to emphasize the never wrong part. He's never once been wrong. We're going to talk about our friends over at FanDuel. You can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. And before we jump into this final segment, we actually have something very special for you. Lars has put together a 4-leg parlay on FanDuel for this game.
So with that being said, anytime touchdown, as we always say, there's so many options for this game. First of all, just looking on FanDuel, it's insane. This is a money game. This is a money game in every stretch of the word. But we're gonna go Jalen Polk for anytime touchdown. It's a good bet. We have, I believe, what do we say? Michael Penix is
3+ touchdowns. Remember that one?
Michael Penix 3+ touchdowns. Man, I lost it here. I
remember. Honestly, we had
Caleb Williams, plus 325.
Over 2.5 passing touchdowns. Over
2.5 passing touchdowns, and then there was the fourth one, which was first half touchdown.
First half touchdown for Marshawn Lloyd.
Thank you. Yep. Those four. Thank you. It's amazing how I'm looking on FanDuel right now, and there's so many. This is a bettor's heaven right now. Like, you could honestly put some money on the defense, and actually, you might have a fair shot. As crazy as that sounds,
I like it a lot. I think that's going to be a fun one. And hey, if anybody out there does throw a couple bucks on that, let us know. Because we love our friends over at FanDuel, and if it hits, we want to give Lars all the credit for that one. But
I do want to say really quick, thank you to FanDuel for listening to me and putting some same game parlays out. Just appreciate that.
Hey, respect. We know they listen. That's why everybody should listen, right? All the everydays out there, what's up. Continue to share the show. We appreciate all that. But we're gonna move into our bold predictions, and I always forget who goes first. I feel like that's also a weekly segment here, but I feel like I did last week, so I'm going to hand it off to you, Lars.
So how do I want to go with this first bold prediction? I mean, there's so many things where if I say 3 sacks on defense, is that considered bold? Like, just because, I mean, like, I was going to say 2. 2 is not necessarily bold, but I'll say 3 because at some point they're going to have to get some form of pressure. And the thing is also with USC's offensive line and the way that offense is structured, that take care, Mike. Shout out to Mike Burrell here. The way USC's offense is structured, Caleb is going to be moving around a lot, which opens the possibility for an extra defender to come off the edge or to come out of nowhere and bring pressure on Caleb. That's, I think, where those sacks are going to come into play and where the tide will turn in the game. So I'm going to say first one, 3+ sacks.
I like it. So I'm going to start on the offense first, as I normally do. And I think I'm going to start with a Michael Penix one, which is where I normally go. Last week's hit, half of it hit last week because I believe I said 400 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. Yep. He hit 4 passing touchdowns and he was just short of 400 yards. So
gotta love that.
So you know what? I'll take that. I'll chalk it up as half a point for me. I'm going to go back to the 4 passing touchdown well, and I think that this is the game he gets back over 400 yards. I know I've said that for a couple weeks in a row, but it's Alex Grinch, man, and I trust Mike to help me out with my anti-Alex Grinch is just Alex Grinch is the worst defensive coordinator in the country agenda. So I trust Mike to help get us there. and just help continue to just push the agendas that we have here on Locked On Huskies every single day. So I'm going to start with that one. Michael Penix, 400 plus yards and 4 passing touchdowns.
I like that. I'm going to stick with the offense. I'm going to stick with your theme of the offense here. And just, I wasn't initially going to do this because of how Washington's not been able to run the ball this season, but it is USC. So when in Rome, in the Coliseum, Dylan Johnson, I'm going to take yours. I'm going to say 130 total yards.
Even more. Okay.
130 total yards and 2 touchdowns.
You know what? I have no choice but to respect that. It's a well I go to often. So I'm going to go to another one I go to often, and I'm going to go with because when you said when in Rome, I thought you were going to go with Rome Odunze because I'm writing a story about him not only traveling to Rome to visit the actual Coliseum, but to visit this will be his first trip to the LA Coliseum. And how much do you think about the Roman Empire? Because personally, for me, it's all the time, not just because I'm a major history nerd, but I've been called Roman Empire at least once a week for my entire life. So, we just have to let that one sit. And I'm going to say Rome Odunze is the leading receiver in this game. He's going to get over 100 yards. I'm going to say, just to add just a little bit extra in there, I'm going to say he gets 8+ catches and a touchdown. I'll stick with one, but I think there's a good chance he can get multiple touchdowns from Michael Penix.
I was going to say, so ironically you say that, I'm just going to double dip on FanDuel here. Rome Odunze is the only UW receiver with a catch parlay. So 6.5 catches, this is over under minus 114. So good bet there.
Thank you.
So shout out to you for that. So let's go back. I can't will myself to have another defensive one. So I'm going to go back to my anytime touchdown. And I was going to
say, you haven't got one of those yet.
I want to get, well, not today, but I always get one of my anytime touchdowns in there. So exactly. I'm going to say, well, the craziest thing is when you look on FanDuel, anytime first half touchdown score, it's all plus money. So let's go, Jeremy Bernard at plus 410 is just almost too enticing not to take if Jalen McMillan doesn't play.
Is that a first half?
That's a first half, but
okay.
At the same point, so that's on FanDuel. But I'm saying for my pick for this, I'm gonna say, you know what, Jack Westover anytime touchdown.
I like that
because I've gone to Jeremy too many times. And I love the kid, but we got to mix it up here.
What are the FanDuel odds on that one?
For
Westy.
Westy first half is plus 290. So I have to imagine full game. Let's see. Anytime touchdown score. Let's see. Anytime. Wow. Did I? Plus 110.
Plus 110. Okay. So you know what? If I were you, I would take that. Just even more money and just say double down that it's going to be in the first half too. So yeah, I'm going to flip over to the defensive side for my next one. And I'm going to go back to the old reliable of Edefwan Ulofosio, total tackles. He had 12 against Stanford. I'm going to say he gets back in double digits this week against USC. And I don't know how bold that is because, Marshawn Lloyd and Caleb Williams are going to just definitely be running all over the place. And I think that one's tough, but I think 10 plus, and then, okay, here's where I'm going to make it bold. He's going to force a fumble in this game. Will they recover it? TBD, but he will force a fumble in this game.
Kind of like Zion against Michigan State.
Yep.
Where he gets the fumble but doesn't actually get credit for it. I respect that. See, part of me wants to say there's going to be an interception in this game, but I truly
That's where my
don't
last
know.
one is.
But I truly don't know if Washington's going to be the defense that forces the interception. So how do I want to do this? There's no.
I mean, I can do my last one since you're
you do your last one and then I'll go to my score prediction.
So somebody who I think and it's somebody I mentioned earlier in the show who I think is going to have a bounce back week is Jabbar Muhammad because he got called for a couple of let's just call them questionable pass interference calls against Stanford, and I think that he knows he has to have a big week, and whoever he's guarding, I think they're going to put him on Taj Washington, who's been Caleb Williams' favorite target this season. And I think that Jabbar Muhammad is going to be the one that comes away with an interception in this game.
This would be the perfect. I mean, this is a draft stock game, right? I mean,
Yes.
both this season and moving. I mean, Caleb is cemented number one. Let's not kid ourselves here. But for Penix, for Rome, Polk,
For even Jalen Polk.
yeah, there's and then flip over to USC. There's a number of guys as well. Bear Alexander,
absolutely.
Bear Alexander, not for this season, but for next season, say, hey, like, I actually showed up in a big time game. That because he hasn't necessarily done that this season. So, do I get a drum roll or just?
No, well, I thought you were doing your last one before the before.
You want me to do one more?
Yeah. Let's do this last one.
Give me. Well, I already did Dylan Johnson, so I can't double down on that. Did Westy? Did give me? You know what? I'm just gonna take your same one, but I'm gonna pick a different player. I'm gonna say Mish Powell interception.
I like it. I can see that one happening. All right, drum roll. Again, don't have a sound effect. Time for Lars's always accurate score prediction.
Right. So keeping in that always accurate theme. So the over-under for the game is 75.5. The spread is now down to 3.
Okay.
First half spread is still favoring Washington at 1.5. So that inclines me to think it's going to be a close game. So give me Washington 45, USC 41.
Okay. So they cover.
It's close. It's respectable for both teams. It's basically kind of the ideal scenario for Washington to where you win the game, you hold USC to under 50, you get above 40. It's a close game. Because, I mean, I have a hard time believing this is going to be like a 45-35, 45-30, just no matter which team you pick, right? Even if you're saying USC gets the 45, it's like it just doesn't seem like it's that kind of game. So, again, injuries could happen. Guys could, things could go haywire, but 45-41 is what I said.
Yep. And I feel like that's a great place to just kind of wrap this one up. Thank you so much, all the everydayers, for tuning in. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. As you have a long day at UW ahead of you with some basketball interviews too. We're gonna start getting some basketball stuff on here pretty soon since the season starts next week. But until then, hey, if you're an everydayer, thank you so much. Make sure you like the video. Leave us a comment if you got any questions for us, because on Friday we're going to be doing a crossover with Mark Culkin of Locked On USC. So stay tuned for that as well. And until then, if you are an everydayer, again, like the video, leave us a 5-star review, leave a comment. Appreciate all that. And if you're not, there's so many ways to get involved with the show. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We are there. We are everywhere. There are so many ways to get involved. And we really appreciate all your support. It does mean a lot to us. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on